Hello, welcome to Tea Time, New Jersey Tea Party Coalition's weekly program. We're really jazzed. We have a great show for you this evening. We have Loren Spivack joining us, who is the free market warrior. And he's going to give us really a great synopsis of the financial situation the country is in, what TARP really was, how it affects our financial future as a country. But first of all, we want to welcome you, Loren. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here.
Great. Well, we met, Loren came to one of our monthly meetings, and we had announced a big initiative for education, primarily on financial issues, because many of us are not, versed in finance. And so when we hear about TARP and QE2, we really don't understand what they're talking about. So Loren was kind enough to come up to us at the end of the program of our meeting and say, hey, listen guys, that's exactly what I do. I help educate folks, and I do it for free. It's a volunteer effort. And you travel all over the country doing this, Loren, don't you?
I do. I've done this in 10 states. About 30 different groups and counting, and I'm working in a few more states now.
Oh my goodness. So, you're here in North Jersey for New Jersey Tea Party Coalition, right? And it was a 2-night seminar, and we had a packed house, and it was really super. So we're going to hit the highlights of what you covered.
Okay.
Okay. So let's start out. What is a free market?
Well, a free market is people interacting with each other voluntarily to get things done in a way that decision makers pay the price and reap the benefit of their own decisions. That's the key factor, that is the keystone, if you will, of a free market. If you don't have that, you don't have a free market. And the key point that I try to get people to understand in my seminars is that most of the things that we want to accomplish in our civilization can be done better and more efficiently and with better results through a free market. So we look at things like education and even things like currencies and banking. We look at, unfortunately nowadays, healthcare, and people say, well, government needs to do that. And the fact is, and there are exceptions, there are a few things where we really do need government, but for most of our goals in our life, we can get better results by doing it through voluntary cooperation than government. What government really means, of course, is the use of force. And that's what government is.
A coercion of some kind.
It's some kind of coercion.
We're going to arrest you if you don't do this, or we're going to fine you if you don't do X, right?
The only thing government brings to the table, to the extent, people say to me, well, these government programs are really something that's, that's good for you. All right, well, if it's really good for me, why do I need to be coerced into doing it?
Exactly. Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit some examples, if you will, some recent ones. When President Obama came into office, the auto industry was in tatters, right? And so his answer was to force the bondholders to relinquish their stakes in GM and Chrysler and to avoid a bankruptcy. What kind of policies were those? Were those free market, or?
Well, obviously not. The free market had delivered its verdict, and it's interesting. One of the things that people like I get accused of is that we're pro-business, and I'm not pro-business at all. If businesses fail to satisfy their customers, they go out of business, and they ought to go out of business. That's what a free market is. It's not being on the side of business. It's being on the side of freedom, and what the bailout of the auto industry was gangsterism. That government is interceding in what had previously been a free exchange marketplace, taking money away from people by force, giving it to their friends, and changing contracts that people had gone into in good faith. And when you do that, when you have a government that does that, it tends to shut down the economy. It's one of the reasons that Obama was able to drag this recession out as long as he did.
So you think that's a key
absolutely.
issue? You do?
Absolutely. we've had plenty of economic downturns. They go for a couple months, and everything's fine.
Right.
The government, however, as we saw in the Great Depression, and as we've seen these last couple of years, the government can drag them out by making people afraid to get into private risk-taking. How do you do that? You do that by pulling the rug out from under people who have made arrangements already, and then the rules change after the fact. Who would you risk your money knowing that Obama can come along and say you don't get to, your terms of your contract don't apply anymore because I say they don't?
Right.
That
so that was the height of what you call government gangsterism.
That's right, and it causes people to shut up their wallets and run for cover.
So really the remedy, the free market remedy to the downturn in the domestic auto industry would be to let them go bankrupt, right?
They needed to go bankrupt, and there's nothing wrong with that. And by the way, people think that that's it, there'll never be another car again. And of course, quite the contrary, businesses go bankrupt all the time. Someone comes in and buys them up and runs them better.
Actually, it's called corporate turnaround. It has a much nicer name.
That's right. And the people who invested in a particular corporation lose their investment, but that's what an investment is. If there's no failure, there's no capitalism, there's no freedom. But the factories are still there, the cars are still there. It doesn't disappear, it simply gets run better.
Gotcha. So really, you look at that and you say the other aspects of the cash for clunkers. So that would be another example, right?
Well, it's certainly an example of government interference and gangsterism. That actually brings in a separate idea, which is a Keynesian. I'm hoping your viewers are comfortable with the adjective Keynesian.
Yeah, if you could, because that was new to us, if you could define that for us.
Well, John Maynard Keynes was a 20th century economist, wrote mostly in the 1930s, and he was wrong.
And this is what college students study all the time.
It's what I was taught in college. It's what I was taught in high school. Nicholas Kristof in today's New York Times has a column where he perpetrates a classic Keynesian myth, which is the deficit spending by the government is good for the economy.
See, we hear that all the time, right?
And it's nonsense. But it's become standard economics, not because it's true, not because it's ever worked, but because the people in power like it, because it implies that giving them more power is good. It's very easy to convince people of a logical equation if the end of the equation is they get more power.
Gotcha. So really, when Nancy Pelosi says that unemployment benefits are great for the economy because for every dollar paid out by the government in unemployment benefits, $2 are spent, that would be an example of their understanding of Keynesian economics.
Well, her math is ridiculous to begin with, right there. But even beyond that, the very idea that money fixes the economy is Keynesian nonsense. It does not. You could give everybody $1 million in unemployment benefits. In fact, why don't we? I mean, we could just print more money. We could just print $1 million and give it to every unemployed person. Would that fix the economy? And if it would, why haven't we done it? The idea behind cash for clunkers is that if you destroy people's cars, they will be forced to buy new cars, and that will stimulate the economy. And a lot of people sadly believe this because it's been so ingrained that destruction is good, and that throwing money around is good. If you lost your job and you came to me for advice, and I said, well, the first thing you should do is spend yourself into debt. Okay, would that be good advice? I don't think so. But that's people are convinced that if the government does that, then it must be good. The truth is that economies are about production. Destruction makes us poorer, not richer, and printing money really doesn't do anything at all. It's people producing things, which is what stimulates an economy, which means that unemployed people should get jobs and produce, and that'll stimulate the economy, not giving them money without producing. And similarly, government workers who produce nothing ought to be pushed into the free market where they actually have to produce to earn their livelihood, and that would make us all richer.
So that's really the key, is the fact that there's freedom, right? Freedom to fail.
That's right.
That's a big component of free market warrior. Another piece is its freedom to go and create. a product or service that the market needs and wants without having regulation and
sure, with
right?
with the incentive that if you satisfy your fellow man, if you produce something that makes people happy and satisfies a need, you will do well.
Gotcha.
That's the incentive that makes every capitalist focus on the greater good.
Exactly. Well, you know, when we come back, we're going to take a little bit of a break later on, but what I wanted to ask you was the cash for clunkers, one of the end results was that automotive used cars went way up in price.
Sure.
Right? And the poor people, or low-income people, find it more difficult to purchase a car. So that was really the net result. And
well absolutely, because an economy, the job of an economy is to produce the things that we need. If you're making less of them, you're making people poorer, and that's inescapable. In the Great Depression, when people, including my parents who grew up in the Great Depression, were literally starving, the government took, I think it was 7 million hogs, and threw them in a ditch and killed them all to drive up the price of pork.
That was outstanding. I never knew that before.
That's Keynesianism. People are hungry. You destroy food in order to keep prices up.
Gotcha.
And that's exactly the same thing that we saw with cars.
So that's interesting. So instead of all that government intervention, then, what could we have done within the spirit of a free market to, spur economic growth back in 2008? What specifically?
You could shrink the government.
Okay, so it would have been laying off federal employees.
And not even laying off. We need to discontinue
the hiring.
A great number of government activities
Gotcha.
that our government's undertaking.
Okay.
And by the way, obviously we have limited time here. For anyone who's interested in my seminar, we will carefully go through this entire program and show people how to create prosperity through freedom.
Gotcha.
And it's free.
Right.
If any of the people out there are interested in my coming and doing a complete seminar on this economics, if you contact me, I'm more than happy to come and
that's such
provide
a great
them with
public service, because it was really stunning. You spoke for, oh gosh, it was, 3 hours each evening over 2 nights,
Sure.
right? So we covered, a tremendous amount of material, but,
but nothing you couldn't have learned in high school.
I know, but we didn't.
Had the high school teachers wanted you to understand freedom.
Well, a number of our members have children in college who are economics majors, and so they felt as though they knew their children were studying Keynesian economics. So that they felt by going to the seminar that they were really well versed in all the alternatives that were more free market based, and the
Absolutely.
theories of Adam Smith and the Austrian School of Economics and all of that. So I think that was really valuable for a lot of parents.
If I provoked some arguments over the dinner table, I'm happy.
Not a bad idea, not at all. So we have this seminar and we talk about free markets, and instead of government intervention, we would have just not hired a lot of workers at the state and local level, right, and federal level.
Well,
what else could we have done?
And obviously we want to, we want to be reasonable for the people involved. But if you reduce the government workforce and expand the private workforce, you will have more prosperity, because the Department of Energy produces no energy.
Right, and that's what people really don't understand. We're told that everything's going to collapse if they shut down.
Exxon Corporation, does produce energy.
Right.
So if fewer people work for the Department of Energy and more people work for Exxon, we will have cheaper gas.
Gotcha.
Particularly if the government will allow for the drilling of oil.
Gotcha. Exactly. And so people need to understand that key part. The other is, I want to touch very quickly on quantitative easing. What is it? You referred to it earlier as the printing of money, correct?
That's correct. It's hitting the copy button on the photocopy machine on the illusion that green pieces of paper make us wealthy. And one of the techniques I talk about a lot in the seminar is, if you imagine yourself stranded on a desert island like Robinson Crusoe, you see how an economy actually works. If I came along and dumped $1 million in cash on you on your island, is that going to help you? No, it isn't, because you don't need money. You need food, you need clothing, you need shelter, and those come from work and production. Absolutely, and we've concluded our first segment, but we'll come back after the short message and learn a little bit more about New Jersey Tea Party Coalition. Our website is njteapartycoalition.org, and when we come back, Loren and I are going to speak about specific
specific free market solutions. And we'll take a look at public schools. Maybe it's a time for education to become a for-profit enterprise. We'll see you when we get back.
With all the excitement happening with the Tea Party, it may be a little hard to separate fact from fiction. Find out the truth for yourself. Visit the New Jersey Tea Party Coalition's website at www.njteapartycoalition.org. You may find a common voice to your concerns on how our government is functioning and discover a means to help restore our nation based on the proven principles of our Constitution.
Hello, welcome back to Tea Time, New Jersey Tea Party Coalition's Public Affairs program. We're starting our second segment with Loren Spivack, the free market warrior. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And Loren has a terrific new book out called Obama Parody, which is really lots of fun. And so hence his email is obamaparody@gmail.com. And that's where you reach Loren to schedule him for a complimentary, or actually free, Free Market Warrior seminar, which is awesome, very detailed. We're just touching on the highlights today, but it's an excellent program. We highly recommend it. Very entertaining, lots of fun. He's really a raconteur, and we really appreciate your volunteering and doing that for us, which is great. And we want to be able just to follow up and make sure you load up your seminar schedule with more and more events, because it's a great public service.
Well, I had a great time with your group, and I would love to do it with other people around New Jersey. What I'm really doing, I think, is what high school ought to do and doesn't, which is just teach people the basic facts of life, of what money is and what it isn't, and what it can do for you and what it can't, and how freedom works, and why socialism, even on its own terms, can't do what it promises. And it's not the fault of the socialists, it's the fault of the system. That just doesn't function.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you talked about education, because we'd like to start this segment with education. And I know we had talked about, you have a story about friends you were visiting was it North Carolina? Sure,
well they were going to beg the local school board to not move the line. Their daughter was in one school, and they redrew the line, so now she'd have to go to the bad school.
Even though she's in the same house, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah, the house didn't move, the line moved, and moreover, the value of that house went down by 15% the instant that the school board moved the line, because anyone who bought the house would have to send their kids to the same lousy school. And it struck me, I've been talking about education before then, but it struck me as just a classic example of how we've come to accept non-freedom when we could get the job done much better with freedom. Why do we let government bureaucrats order us to send our children to a particular school? And why would we want a healthcare system where the government picks our doctors for us? In most things in life that work, you know, the clothing industry does a perfectly good job of providing us reasonably priced clothing in tremendous variety.
Yes.
You can shop anywhere you like, buy anything you please. You can get whatever kind of food you like. You can go to any restaurant. There's all kinds of ranges of prices and cuisines and styles.
Right.
And that's how markets satisfy their customers. And I propose that we ought to have the same thing in education for about half. And by the way, I can run the numbers and prove this to you. For about half what we're spending now on the public school system, you could have parents privately engage for-profit schools to teach their children.
Right.
And the parents would be in control. They could take their money and their kid out anytime they want. They could go find the school that's exactly right for their children and their personal beliefs. And we wouldn't be slaves to a government bureaucracy that decides how our kids have to be educated. And it does an incredibly poor job of it, I might add,
well,
all the cost. $11,500 per pupil nationwide, by the way.
I know, and here in New Jersey, it's even more, and that really resonates with New Jerseyans, Loren, because we have something called the Abbott schools, and so if you look at, they're the poor performing schools in usually the lower socioeconomic neighborhoods throughout New Jersey, and they get the lion's share of the money. So the answer to failing schools in poor neighborhoods has been to throw more money at them over a sustained period of time. So we throw more and more money at these schools and students, and their performance level just continues to deteriorate. So clearly what we're doing isn't working. So I think what you're talking about.
What liberals look at the world and they see private prosperity and public squalor. And their solution is to expand public squalor.
Right, okay. Exactly.
So clearly what we need is
let's all be miserable.
We need more public squalor. Let's put more into that.
Exactly. So, your thought was, and I think you used an analogy which I thought was really cool, like we have such a high pain threshold with education that if someone had told us that we could only visit a car dealer that was within a certain geographic area to purchase our car, we tell them to drop dead. I mean, we'll go where we feel, like you used the analogy with, clothing stores. Well, the fact that you can only go to a set school district and those define schools within that district, regardless of whether or not it's right for your child, is just, insanity. Right, yet we stand for it.
Yeah, well, because once government gets into something, people just become used to it. I mean, and I hate to go to extreme examples, but people who lived in the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany, or any other totalitarian society, you get used to the fact that the secret police can just come along and grab your neighbors out of their bed, one night and you never see them again. Right. People get used to anything.
Yes.
That doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
And as I said, for about half the cost of what we are spending, people think. I mean, I presume you don't think that public education is free.
Right.
And I'm presuming your audience doesn't think that it's free.
No, 75% of our taxes, property taxes, fund our local schools.
It's incredibly expensive. So why don't we give people their money back? And for about half the cost, you could have a school which is completely free and completely in the business of making the parents happy with the quality of education they're providing to their children.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great solution that should be on the table, Loren. Now, that's primary and secondary and high school, but what about colleges? We talked a little bit about that during our off-camera break.
Sure. Well, colleges, I'm going to steal your term because I like it very much. We have this education bubble, is what we were talking about, where the prices go up and up and up, and the quality has gone down and down and down. Eventually, reality is going to hit, that people are going to realize that they're paying an insane amount of money for something which is essentially worthless. And the solution, again, is, as I said at the beginning, and this is the key point of all economics, is that the person who makes the decision has to pay the bills and reap the benefit.
That's right.
And the person who should pay for college is the student, the adult student who attends college, and that can be done through loans, so you don't necessarily have to have the money up front, but it ought to be an economic equation. If I'm going to college and it's going to cost $100,000 or whatever it would cost, I ought to make the equation as to whether that's going to pay for itself with my increased earning power, having gotten the college degree. And I don't mean to offend anybody, although I'm sure I will. You spend 4 years studying, gender studies or sociology or any of a number of other majors that are floating around these days. You haven't really increased your economic productivity potential at all. And you've spent a great deal of money to do it. Now, it's fine to do that if it's your money. Okay? But it's not fine to tax plumbers and electricians and carpenters and bus drivers who didn't go to college at all, to tax their money away so that you can spend $200,000 getting a degree in gender studies, which is worthless. And if the person who, of course, people get very angry at me for this, because if the person who is making the decision is actually paying all that money, they won't make such a foolish decision, and things like these kinds of fluffy non-subjects will disappear because no one would pay for them with their own money. It's like artists who make art that nobody wants, so they get government subsidies. Well,
and usually insults Christianity, of course. If
you insult Christians, you get even bigger subsidies.
Exactly.
If no one is willing to pay for your art with their own money, you know what that means? It means you stink. And you want to get a job that you can actually do well.
Exactly. And speaking of that, I wanted to segue into healthcare before we end, because one of the byproducts of the healthcare bill was that all college-age students had to be insured. So what happened was the insurance companies used to offer insurance for college students. Well, they stopped because it was so expensive as part of the healthcare plan. So now parents and students are scrambling trying to get healthcare for their child who lives away from home. And it's just been a huge burden on families.
Well, you end up with this kind of rat race where the government, keeps making more rules and becomes more and more impossible, and eventually it breaks down the entire system.
Right.
The truth, and this is a complex subject, which I think you'll aver that in the seminar we really take it apart and completely deal with it. But the short answer is this: there's too much insurance.
Absolutely. And I love what you talked about, the way that you phrased it. Do you remember how that, your analogy, you were talking about, having a house burning down?
Oh, in terms of insurance,
yes.
Yeah, that insurance makes sense if you're trying to manage major risks that you can't handle.
Yes.
So the risk of my house burning down and being completely destroyed is too great a risk for me to bear.
That's right.
So I get insurance. But insurance shouldn't cover burnt-out light bulbs.
Right.
My auto insurance is not going to cover my oil changes, and your medical insurance should not cover going to the doctor because you have a runny nose,
right.
or your penicillin, or your routine eye exams and things like that.
Exactly.
It's the presence of way too much insurance that causes prices to go out of control. And people say, well, I can't pay for the health care, without the insurance.
Right.
Well, who can?
Right.
We can pay for it if we let the market bring prices down, and that will happen when we start moving away from this insurance regimen and going back to people paying their own bills. It's no fun paying bills.
Right.
Nobody likes it.
Right.
But the basic premises of a free society, well, of any society, is the bills have to be paid. And if you have people pay their own bills, they make wise decisions.
Absolutely, because many of us don't even know what the retail is.
That's right.
Right, with the docs,
and if we're not paying our own bills, we make
right.
foolish decisions.
Exactly.
Which is what's happening more and more and more, and there's no constraint on prices. And I suspect that a lot of people in our government know this and are intentionally creating a crisis so they can lead to a complete government takeover, which would be the worst possible thing that could happen to everybody. The best possible thing, believe it or not, as much as you don't like it, is to pay your own bills.
Absolutely, because you know what? It's cash.
And have doctors compete over who has the best price and the best service.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that would really, I think that would be, phenomenal in those health savings accounts, that we could have that are portable, right?
Sure. Well, that's a step on the way.
Right.
But again, is clothing not a basic necessity? Why doesn't the government, take over clothing?
Right.
That's a necessity. You gotta have clothing.
They want to.
Particularly up here in the Northeast, it gets mighty cold in the winter if you don't have clothing.
Exactly. I think clothing's next because we have food. And
people pay for their own clothes. There's no clothing insurance. The government doesn't pay for the clothing or subsidize it or organize it. And the result is you can go to Walmart or Target or wherever you like to shop, or somewhere very fancy, and get the clothes that are right for you at reasonable prices.
And that is a perfect segue because we have to go to our close. This went by so quickly. Thank you so much, Loren. We hope you enjoyed this evening's program. Again, I'm Laura Walsh with New Jersey Tea Party Coalition. Visit our website, njteapartycoalition.org, where you'll see a lineup of our events for the month. And we have a meeting once a month. We'd love for you to join us. It's here in North Jersey. And in case you've missed any of you're a new-time viewer and you've missed our previous programs, just log on to our website, which again is www.njteapartycoalition.org, and you can preview past programs. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and take care.